The manner in which political role players, be it presidential candidates, National Assembly hopefuls, party members, and its respective friends and foes, ought to conduct themselves is a question of the law. This evening, on the Wheels of Justice, we'll seek systematically to dissect what the conduct or the prescribed conduct is. A very good evening and a warm welcome to you and yours. This is the Wheels of Justice and I'm Daniel Nadunya, your host. It remains our business to tackle contentious legal matters without fear or favor. Therefore, invest in a deep breath and don't go anywhere, as we'll return in a jiffy. This session is officially in motion, and we are honored to welcome to this platform Mr. Henry Shimtwikeni, a legal practitioner in private practice and the director of HS Law, as well as Mr. Alpheus Haufiku, that's a senior legal officer attached to the Electoral Commission of Namibia, the constitutional body on whose shoulders Wednesday's election rests. Good evening, Leonard, friends, and thank you so much for again making time for this platform.
Good evening, Daniel, and thank you for having us.
Good evening. Thank you for having us, Daniel.
Yes, I can guarantee you may not need to be worried as to whether I'm going to request you to disclose which party or candidate you are voting for. However, I would want you to basically prove or show that you are a registered voter and you are indeed exercising that democratic right come Wednesday. But that as it may, let's start with the conversation.
Thank you.
Now, the Code of Conduct is basically a guideline or a set of rules that are put in place to guide the conduct of political parties and candidates and their supporters during the election. Just tell me, Mr. Haufiku, what does the Code of Conduct require or stipulates?
Good evening, Namibians, and thank you, Daniel, for the question. Basically, when we are looking at the Code of Conduct, first and foremost, we need to, from the onset, to understand that this is basically, to make sure that when you have a Code of Conduct, it's there to promote the conducive environment where you conduct the elections in a free, fair, and credible manner, that you create the climate for the electoral activities to take place without any intimidation or coercion or any interference or reprisal for that matter.
Yes.
That any political party or contesting candidate participate in a democratic processes without any fear, or conduct himself or herself in such a manner that whatever you want to achieve or you want to put yourself up there to Namibians to vote for you, you are a candidate of credible, you are a candidate of quality that the Namibians are looking for. And these are just really guides. We don't necessarily need to have a code of conduct for us to behave, but for us to do that, even on Sunday, sometimes we go to church, not necessarily that we go there for not to commit a sin, but we must be there to be guided in our daily lives.
Yes.
Yes.
But while still on that and with you, what are some key provisions? What does the Code of Conduct basically prohibit? If you can remember 2 or 3 that are very critical.
Yeah. Thank you. There are so many do's and don'ts in the, described in the Code of Conduct. One of the prohibited act that you don't need to do is really to make sure that you cannot use violence or intimidate or threat anybody, particularly now that we are about to go to the poll on the 27th of November 2024. You cannot really influence or incite violence or bribe a person that you go and vote in such a particular manner, or coerce a person to vote a candidate that he or she does not want to vote. And again, also there are issues of hate speech. You cannot use hate speech, while you are conducting your campaign. There are a number of conduct that are prohibited in terms of the code of conduct. And it's very important really for a Namibian out there, for political party, for supporters, for candidates to understand the purpose of code of conduct is really to make sure that whatever we are doing in terms of campaigning, in terms of our conduct, political conduct, we do it within the sphere of the understanding that people must be given freedom to exercise whatever they want to exercise.
Yes.
Being a candidate, or being a supporter, or being a political party.
Now, Mr. Shimtikeni,
yes,
as per the government gazette,
yes,
the code of conduct or the election codes of conduct are to be read in tandem with the Public Gathering Act as well as the Intimidation Proclamation
yes,
Act of 1989. Perhaps let's look at those two acts and look at what are the salient provisions of those specific acts, and probably why are they relevant insofar as the election code of conduct is concerned?
Look, there's basically three things, like my colleague indicated, that are key in terms of code, in terms of behavior of political parties and voters. It's the aspect of violence, the aspect of intimidation, and the aspect of inducement. So those were passed in 1989. The elections of the elections which led to our first democratic government were, I think, in November 1989. So they passed firstly. Obviously, at the time, it was extremely tense. It wasn't like now. The administration of the day then felt it necessary to re-emphasize and say that intimidation is something which should not, find space within the election process leading up to the election, as well as certain procedures in terms of how public gatherings must be conducted. Those provisions were before the 1989 election. They're still applicable today. And again, those at the time were important at the time, particularly given that at the time that intimidation was extremely rife. If one knows the history of it. Our country, after 34 years, has graduated from that a lot.
Yes.
So it was extremely necessary then, and those laws still exist today to remind us.
Are they still necessary?
Well, yes, I believe they are. I only believe that the only problem with the Public Gatherings Act proclamation is that I think sometimes our security services, the police, misinterpret it to think that it's for permission. It's not permission, it's notification. Meaning that they would want to be aware of, it says that you must notify them when we're gathering when a particular party or whatnot is having a gathering of sorts, so that they can properly respond to it, not only to protect the outside people, but also to protect the gathering itself. Yeah. So I think
there has been proposed amendments to that effect, but again, it was put on ice.
Look, Daniel,
yes.
Before my colleague comes in, yes, of course, laws always need to become amended, but if it does become amended, a law of such nature is necessary. To notify, look, the problem is the interpretation, I believe, by the police. It's not permission. It's notifying so that they can properly respond and prepare for it. If you look, for example, you say, oh, we are going to do convoys. It's necessary for the police to be able to prepare for that so that they can assist the convoy in moving smoothly, not disturbing spaces as little as possible. And, I think it might need some amendments, but every democratic country has a law of sorts which does that. It should obviously not be in a way which aims to curb people sharing a common view, meeting or gathering or protesting for a particular purpose, particularly in these elections. But yes, 1989 is a long time ago, and of course the law should be developed a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe
just
to take it where my colleague left it.
Yes.
You need to understand, Daniel, that any law that is against the supreme law of this country, that's the Constitution, that's a bad law. But the fact that this piece of legislation is still existing in our laws there's an indication that we need them, and they are still within the parameter of the Constitution. You need to understand again that, especially the intimidation proclamation, it's looking at when we are, say for instance, the period where we are now, political parties are campaigning, candidates are campaigning, we need to make sure that this sort of intimidation, where you have maybe, for instance, somebody said at one point in time that there are some no-go area in this country, that's intimidation. Any political party is allowed to go anywhere. And in terms of that piece of registration, you cannot intimidate somebody who is conducting his or her campaign in a parameter that is allowed in terms of the law. And hence we need some of this piece of registration. Again, the gathering, sometimes you cannot just campaign because it's a matter of going anywhere and campaign. You need to notify the police so that, as Tigeni has alluded earlier on to say, not only to protect you, but also to protect the environment where you are. It might be that you are, you are campaigning peaceful, but somebody and external forces might come there, and then again you need the police to escort you out of that place where perhaps the threat of any sort of intimidating you or appear out of nowhere. Yes. You need the police really to intervene so that, and you can only do that using the piece of the two registration that we have indicated.
Thank you so much. But look, with only 3 days left before Namibians can basically cast their votes, and we have seen here and there, we've seen also on social media, things are getting tense as political parties and their supporters campaign and so forth. We've seen people tearing posters or placards of opponents or political parties or candidates. We have heard songs that are being sung, and they have some kind of derogatory languages. We've had political A accuse political B of this and that, but that is what we've heard. But what has been your observation thus far?
Well, Daniel, the code of conduct is clear, but I should also admit that this code of conduct, although the guideline has been in existence, was only gazetted around September 2024. And political parties, they have ascribed to the code of conduct. They are aware the content of it. Well, incidents of that nature supposed to be avoided if all political players would implement the code of conduct, if adhere to the code of conduct. Because it's clearly, especially in the provision 6 of the code of conduct, where you cannot just publish or destroy other political parties' material, campaigning material. It's prohibited in terms of that provision. Also, you cannot go there, defacing, other political parties' placards or banners or whatever you. These are things that are prohibited in terms of the code of conduct. But as you are aware, human fallacy is always an issue. There will be incidents of that nature from time to time. But what needs to be, pointed out is just that this is against the law, and it should not happen, or supposed not to happen. But from our observation as a commission, we only had so far one incident that was communicated to us, and immediately we have condemned it. We have issued a media release that that incident of that nature, where political rival have an issue or they want to fight, that should not be the case in independent Namibia.
But Mr. Shimtikeni, yes, one would also argue to say, but the nature of politics and campaigns is basically about convincing the voters that you are better than the other one, and one may need to employ some other ways of, if those ways would include some kind of intimidation or whatsoever.
Daniel, look, Elections, I always say, elections at the national level come once every 5 years. In the absence of that, we have we tend to have a functioning society with our different branches of government, running like a machine. This particular process is important because it determines who's going to be at the helm of running of the affairs of the country. So we have a few political parties who are being guided in terms of their conduct as they are trying to convince the electorate that they should be given the mandate to govern. Mm-hmm. You are convincing the electorate to give you the mandate to govern.
Yes.
So in doing so, you need to do it in a manner which is, after the elections are done, going to result in a peaceful, tranquil society. So people tend to think at times, and I like the fact that my colleague said that there's one part where he said, it was only gazetted in September, sorry.
Yes.
Look, Daniel, a lot of the things that are in the Code of Conduct are things that ordinarily, in the absence of the Code of Conduct, are already unlawful. The Code of Conduct is symbolic. It is symbolic, and the political parties have to come sign it. Those things in the Code of Conduct, even in the absence of the Code of Conduct, are unlawful anyways. Mm-hmm. That's what I always say. Those things are unlawful things. It's a symbolic thing to say that, look, we are conducting this election in a particular manner. Some of them are actually in the Electoral Act itself, and they're criminal. You can either go to jail or be fined, or your party can be deregistered. Yes. But the Code of Conduct, like he says, the Code of Conduct is like a reminder of sorts. And it was gazetted in September. So political parties come, bring your leaders, come sign. And you must sign to say
yes. Maybe let's expand on that so that our viewers out there can actually understand. When you say even in the absence of the Code of Conduct, such conducts that are not permissible, probably referring to in terms of the common law, in terms of our ordinary laws.
So like I said, there's three areas basically in terms of my analysis. This conduct, and I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Like inciting violence. In the absence of even before the Electoral Act, inciting violence is a criminal offense.
Yes.
You get it? It's a criminal offense already.
Yes.
So there's some conduct which is criminal even outside of the Electoral Act. There's some conduct which is introduced as criminal by the Electoral Act itself.
Yes.
The Electoral Act and its code.
Right.
Yeah, it makes it criminal. And then there's some conduct which is not a criminal offense, but is what do you call it? Shunned upon. It's a dim view is taken of it, and that attracts a sanction which is not necessarily criminal. But if the ECN writes to you and says stop it, the political party, and the right to you again says stop it, yes. And the right to you again stop it, they have the power to deregister you. Right. So it's not necessarily a criminal offense, but it's unlawful and can lead to a deregistration.
Right.
Yes.
Let's talk about who is really bound by this Code of Conduct. Look, of course, we have leaders of political parties, we have candidates themselves, we have supporters, card-carrying members, but we also have ordinary supporters that are just members of the public, and they are not necessarily card-carrying supporters. Are they also bound to these codes of conduct?
Daniel, maybe we need to look at what is the Code of Conduct trying to protect.
Yes.
First is to promote that conducive environment. And where is that conducive environment for us to conduct the fair, a credible election in Namibia? Meaning, Namibians, somehow we are bound to respect the different views of our diverse Namibians. Now, whether or not there is always a question of somebody saying, but I'm not a political player. The question is, where are you? You are in Namibia, and that condition where you need to respect others' view, it should be only Namibians. Now, whether or not you are bound, it's a question of material evidence. What have you done to promote either your bad conduct or your behavior? What's your behavior trying to influence somebody? What's your behavior trying to incite violence? What's your behavior trying to intimidate somebody or coerce somebody to go and vote in a particular manner? These are the evidence that we need to look at to say, no, but why should the Code of Conduct apply to me if I haven't done anything? All in all, I always say, as long as you are a Namibian that exercise your freedom, your freedom of expression, somehow you are bound by a code of conduct. But it all depends as well. When do you want to bring that application into the being of questioning a person whether or not you have violated the code of conduct?
Yes, that actually brings me to a question. Is there a monitoring mechanism from the side of ECN? How do you monitor omissions and so forth when it comes to the code of conduct? Or you are basically just reliant on somebody being aggrieved and reporting?
You know, the code of conduct has indicated, Daniel, that any violence or any conduct that is being alleged, the aggrieved person must then report that conduct to the nearest police station, because that's the starting point. Within the area where the alleged conduct of individual or political party has taken place, that's the starting point. Once the police is aware, because understand it that way that Namibia is not just, it's a country where we need to make sure that an accused person must be given also an opportunity to be heard. And if you are being accused that your conduct was wrong, then you must also be given an opportunity to explain why you have conducted yourself in a particular manner. Hence, it's not the commission now to go around sniffing as to whether or not the person has violated the code of conduct, but it's for the individual who has been witnesses the conduct either of a political party, of a candidate, or a supporter, intimidating somebody or using, hate speech to report that particular incident. And then the commission will also then come in with the report of the police. The commission will then also come in to, look at how the commission wants to involve as far as that conduct is concerned. Say, for instance, if it's a political party, then we need to deal with that political party.
Right.
If it's an individual who has committed that crime, then the police must go ahead whether that person needs to be taken through the process of, criminal processes, and then that will take place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Shimtuken, in your Leonard opinion,
Yes.
do you really think it is sufficient to rely on aggrieved parties or individuals to basically report an omission or a misconduct? Does it mean that if nobody reported a misconduct or an incident, basically there was no misconduct?
Look, I think I'm listening to my colleagues speaking.
Yes.
Look, it's quite it's a tricky situation for the ECN, because on the one hand, the ECN does not want to appear to only be involved in certain circumstances where they do have the power to come themselves and intervene in it. But it's tricky in that they don't want to obviously be perceived as only intervening sometimes. But one does believe in that if it is, that we have a particular institution which is tasked with ensuring that our country has a fair process before the elections and fair process during the elections. If instances arise which require the intervention of the ECN, even in the absence of a complaint, the ECN must intervene. I believe that, look, I think that this year, the worst incident that I saw, and I look at it terribly, was the one where someone was slapped at someone went and slapped someone at a rally. It's terrible. We're very lucky that this particular election, unlike our past elections at the times of the COD and the RDP a few years ago, had a lot of things, like you said, no-go areas, no whatnot. We didn't have too much of that. But I believe that the ECN, when it is that it observes certain conduct which needs intervention, must intervene. We do have, unfortunately, currently as it is from all political parties, terrible songs which are recorded, which are circulating from all political parties, where they are not conducive to the kind of society we're trying to build. So I believe that the ECN needs to act on that, not to one particular party, but perhaps a cautionary note of sorts to all of them, because it's actually unlawful. It's unlawful. Some of the nature of the songs and the wording of those is in violation of the code. But we can't then say we are going to wait for a particular complaint. They are all doing it, all those political parties. This one records a song like this, the other one records another song like this. There the ECN must intervene because they are observing that it's degenerating in terms of the kind of culture and climate that we want before, during and after the election. So I do believe that the ECN must not just sit there and watch and say, oh, we are waiting for a complaint to be reported. No.
So
they must intervene.
In other words, there should be some kind of monitoring, kind of...
Yes, the ECN has those powers in the Act.
Right.
Yeah, they have those powers.
Is it something that is doable?
Well, maybe what we need to understand is there are other administrative issues that you need to take into consideration. I really
Is funding one of them?
Of course. And you cannot...
The Commission does not have enough funds to
not only
monitoring mechanism in place.
You need to make sure that all over you put up mechanisms in place in the regions, because these things are not just happening in Commerce, where there is the headquarters of ECN. You need to go all out there to make sure that you have the record of it. But maybe we don't need to start there. Maybe we need to start at the bigger picture of looking at how we have been doing as a nation. These things has been going on, it's rooted there. I used to like our late president, who used to say, don't play the person, but play the ball. Don't play the man, but rather play the ball. We tend to, many times, to want to play a man. Instead of just going there, promote your manifesto, talking the plan that you have for the electorate.
Yes.
We want to, go out there destroying others' image, destroying others' reputation. And I think that is what my colleague is trying to communicate, to say, look, there are songs, there are other things that are manufactured there that are not necessary, that are violating the code of conduct. Whether or not the ECN should really intervene in some of these things is a valid point that we need to look at it, that we need to consider as we move forward with our, growing of our democracy. I think we need to speak to all the political parties. We have systems in place where we used to meet all the political parties' representatives. And as we go on, these are some of the issues, they become subject matter of discussion, so that we change how we conduct business. Because code of conduct is not just context during the election. It's a code of conduct that should be there guiding us as political party and political organization and candidates.
Thank you so much. You're watching The Wheels of Justice, coming to you live and direct from Cullinan Street in the Namibian capital, Windhoek. We'll be back after a brief break. Welcome back, Namibia. Thank you for staying with us. You now have the opportunity to engage our experts with any relevant and concise interventions. The code of conduct of the Wheels of Justice is clear. Respect is non-negotiable, and prank calls shall be traced to your home. The number to dial here in the studio is 061-291-3417. That is 291-3417. In the meantime, we continue with this discourse. Right, I want us to look at recent incidents. Political parties serving refreshments at their rallies came under fire for alleged bribery. There are opinions out there that considered the giving of food to supporters who came for the rallies as a form of bribery. Could a plate of food be construed as bribery? Can that, Mr. Himtukeni, amount to bribery?
I first want to hear what my colleague says, and I'll respond to that. Daniel, I've been considering it and thinking about it, but I want to hear what my colleague says before I come in.
Right, since you come from an organization that is a custodian
of the determination.
Well, Daniel, when it comes to the elements of a crime, I always want to start there.
Right.
The first element that I'm looking at is the intention.
Okay.
Now, the political party that is just serving some refreshment to the supporters, do they have an intention to influence the supporters to go and vote for that particular political party?
Well, it might also depend, isn't it?
The second element, and I'm looking at the secrets of votes. Because, of course, you can give me food, but that's not guaranteeing you that I'm going to vote for you.
Yeah.
Because my vote is my secret. So these are elements that I'm sometimes looking at. But you can look at the code of conduct,
yes,
and saying, and it's also in terms of the Electoral Act, that bribery is one of the elements, I mean, it's one of the criminal offense or statutory offense, if you like. But you need to look at the intention of the person. Because the people who are coming to the rallies, not only people who are age of, not even the registered voters, some of them. Now, the question that you need to prove as evidence, are all those people voters? By giving them food, are they going to vote for you? Because we have no statistic. Who was there at that meeting, who is a registered voter and who was not? And some of them, they are even underage. So that to me is a non-starter, and I don't know even why we want to raise it to that level, but I would leave it to my colleague,
yes,
maybe to come with a different
I would also want to understand or to know if, as a candidate or a political party, I have responsibility to actually make sure that my supporters are not thirsty or hungry during the time period at which I keep them at that specific rally. But let's hear from our first caller, Mbambi from Tsumeb. Good evening. Caller, good evening. Mbambi? Well, I don't seem to get anything coming through from Mbambi there from Tsumeb. But let's continue. Does a political party or a candidate have responsibility towards their supporters? I mean, we have seen some of these people are being transported from further fields to a specific rally, and maybe one might feel a sense of responsibility to basically feed them, isn't it?
Look, if I may, Daniel, look, that one is a bit tricky. I think generally, particularly as Africans, it would be very irresponsible of you to gather people in a particular area from 9 o'clock in the morning till in the evening,
yes,
and not provide any kind of refreshment, yes, for them. I think that particular offense, in terms of inducing and bribing particular people, becomes very, very relevant on election day, whereby if it is hypothetically, you have one particular individual from one particular organization standing somewhere around, with a bag of money saying, "You people, I want you to go and vote this one. You take this particular purple note so that when you accept it, I'm giving it to you so that you can go vote for a particular party." Then it becomes blatantly criminal. But yes, obviously, like my colleague is saying, when you enter the ballot, it's just you and your God who's determining what you are voting for. But I think that's in that kind of that's the area where it becomes very easy for you to say that this is purely criminal, purely offensive, and it violates the law. But the one in terms of providing some kind of refreshments to people, my view is that, we don't have to be pedantic. We mustn't interpret the law so much that it becomes narrow, that we are then going to have the next election where people are sitting in a particular area with no food. We must. I don't know if you understand, Daniel. But the other example that I mentioned in terms of on election day, I think that kind of conduct is the one whereby the police should be very quickly brought into act on such kind of thing, because it comes very close to satisfying all of the elements of the crime.
Yes. And maybe, Daniel, just to add, to many cited examples that we learned some times ago, that when you are interpreting the law, you need to understand the context as well. Say, for instance, we had an issue of a criminal law that you possess drugs, for instance. Now, the question that has been good way of interpreting it was, if you have a judge,
yes,
who was then given the drugs to a police officer,
yes,
as an exhibit in court, will you be able now to go and say, yeah, the police officer and the judge, they will also possess that drugs, they must be charged? That's how we need to interpret that code of conduct as well, that you need to understand the context.
Yes.
That individual has no intention to ask those supporters to give, to vote for that particular candidate, but rather is just to entertain and say, these people come to me, they are my guests, let me entertain them.
Yes.
And that is where we can take it.
Unfortunately, Leonard, friends, we have run out of time, and there is so much we could talk about, especially on this topic. But again, like I said, I indicated at the beginning, I would want to hold you to account. Are you a registered voter, Mr. Shimtikeni?
Well, I Henry Omatini Shimtikeni, I'm a registered voter, and here's my voter's card. And I'm going to cast my vote on the 27th for a particular party and individual of my choice. And I'm not going to be influenced or induced by anyone. And if it is that somebody tries to do some kind of violence or intimidation towards me, I'm going to report it to the Namibian police or to my colleague here, since I have his number.
Of course, notwithstanding that you are coming from ECN, are you a registered voter, and are you going to cast your vote?
Daniel, come the 27th of November 2024, this is my registered card, and I'm going to cast my vote for my candidate or for any particular party of my choice, and my vote is my secret. I'm here just to prove to you that this is the card I'm going to participate.
Thank you so much. I too, Daniel Nadunya, am a registered voter, and of course just waiting for the 27th, that is Wednesday. But fellow Namibians, when the wheels of justice returns next Sunday, we promise to bring you again some more exciting topic. But as for now, this is all the time we had for you. Please remember to go out there and cast your vote. But this session stands adjourned.